Hello, my name is Dominique, and this is my presentation on my population-level health education. I focused on women's nutrition and persons with hypertension. The four health topics I chose to focus on were healthy eating and weight control for women, and exercise and diet to help control blood pressure. Background and significance. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention 2018, only 12.2% of adults meet the daily fruit intake recommendation, and only 9.3% of adults meet the daily vegetable intake recommendation. Lopez Arana and Vendano Van Lentho and Burdoff 2014 indicated that 62% of Americans are overweight or obese. A report by Ogden and Associates 2017 identified that obesity decreased in women who had increased income levels. The women who attend the Wellness Center are from lower economic households and therefore are at higher risk for obesity. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention 2018 identified that at least 67% of adults above the age of 55 have at least one chronic condition, one of which is hypertension. And lastly, a third of the adults in the US have high blood pressure. Healthy People 2020. The health education topic that covers healthy eating for women is aligned with Healthy People 2020 objectives of increase the contribution of fruits to the diets of the population aged 2 years and older, and increase the variety and contribution of vegetables to the diets of the population aged 2 years and older. Weight control education for women helps meet the objectives of increase the proportion of adults who are at a healthy weight and reduce the proportion of adults who are obese. The two Healthy People 2020 objectives reduce the proportion of persons in the population with hypertension and increase the proportion of adults with pre-hypertension who meet the recommended guidelines for physical activity, aligns with the health education class covering exercise to control blood pressure. Health education on diet to control blood pressure aligns with Healthy People 2020's objective to increase the proportion of adults with pre-hypertension who meet the recommended guidelines for body mass index. Needs assessment. General needs of the community were obtained during the windshield survey of the immediate areas around the Wellness Center. Driving around the community allowed me to see that obesity among the residents was an issue and it was prevalent. There were no large grocery chains in the area, and there are many fast food chains. The attendees of the Wellness Center were interviewed to find out what they needed to help achieve their health and wellness goals, and a recurring theme was their desire for more knowledge. A nurse practitioner who frequently volunteers at the Wellness Center was interviewed, and she indicated the need for willing volunteers to provide teaching and support to the people in the community. Theoretical framework and needs assessment. The pre-seed-proceed model was used to guide my project. In the pre-seed phase, I was able to identify my desired outcome for this project, which was to teach health classes that were relevant to the needs of the population I was targeting. The model also helped me identify barriers to implementation of my health classes, which helped me better prepare when giving the health lectures. The pre-seed-proceed model also helped me identify barriers that the attendees might face during the health classes. Issues, education, and practice. A major barrier for the participants of the health classes was lack of knowledge. They required basic knowledge regarding nutrition, weight control, and diet and exercise for blood pressure control. The attendees of the classes also require a high sense of self-motivation in order to act upon the knowledge gained in the classes. The attendees of the health classes are from low economic households and oftentimes find themselves putting financial endeavors ahead of health behaviors, such as going to work for more than 40 hours per week to make their rent and eating fast food instead of cooking at home due to time constraints. As mentioned in a previous slide, the Wellness Center requires more support from personnel who is willing to volunteer their time to teach health classes to the patrons of the Wellness Center. All the health classes given at the Wellness Center were done via a PowerPoint presentation on a projector in a classroom, and I included handouts in the classes that had fast facts on the topics covered. In the class that focused on healthy eating for women, I covered the importance of healthy eating, provided examples of fresh fruit and vegetables that are affordable, gave them tips on how to avoid trans fat, saturated fats, and sugars, and taught them how to read nutrition labels to identify those items. In the class for weight control, I explained the importance of maintaining a healthy weight, how to calculate their own BMI, along with what their numbers meant. And I was able to tie this part of the class into the class for healthy eating, as healthy eating can help control their weight as well. For both blood pressure classes, I started with what high blood pressure is, what it means, and why they need to control their own blood pressure. For the exercise to control blood pressure class, I helped them identify exercises that were appropriate to help lower their blood pressure. I taught them the recommended amount of daily exercise needed and how to check their blood pressure at home, along with what their numbers meant. In the diet to control blood pressure, I taught the class how to look at nutrition labels, specifically for sodium content of the items they are purchasing or consuming. I taught them how salt can be substituted with other flavorings such as garlic, onions, and other herbs, and I gave them examples of common food items that are high in sodium. In order to continue to give these health classes at the Wellness Center, personnel is needed on a volunteer basis only. There is no significant cost to continue the classes. Cost of paper will be needed to continue to provide handouts to the attendees, but it is not a requirement. The classes can still be taught without paper supplies. Attendees of the classes can be asked to bring their own writing tools to take notes. Training for the classes is not required as long as the person conducting the classes has knowledge regarding the topics. Healthcare professionals are the optimal individuals for teaching the classes. The Wellness Center is linked to the LAC-USC Medical Center, where healthcare professionals are abundant and can be sought out at the hospital. Equipment is a projector and screen, laptop for the PowerPoint presentation, and a classroom to conduct the classes. Project evaluation and outcome measurement. For the healthy eating class, I wanted at least 70% of the class to be able to correctly state the recommended amount of daily fruit and vegetable intake. For the weight control class, I wanted at least 70% of the class to be able to state at least 2 ways to help reduce or control their weight. I wanted at least 70% of the class to be able to correctly state and the recommended daily amount of physical activity for the exercise class, and I wanted at least 70% of the participants of the diet class to be able to correctly identify at least 3 items that are high in sodium content. I was able to measure the success and short-term goals of each class by passing out a quiz at the end of the class, which correlated to the objectives stated on this slide. The health classes given at the Wellness Center focused on health eating and weight control for women, and diet and exercise for blood pressure control. One major issue that I faced during the health classes was the language barrier. Many of the attendees of the classes were Hispanic and Spanish speaking only. Luckily, I had my clinical facilitator there to help me translate. I felt that I may have been able to connect more with the individuals if I spoke and understood Spanish, or if I was from a similar cultural background. Another problem I faced was not having enough handouts for the participants. I did not anticipate the amount of people who would show up for the class, and I was short on handouts. If I were to hold these classes again at the Wellness Center, I would utilize a sign-up sheet in advance so I will know how many people will be attending the class, preventing the issue of not having enough handouts. These are the references I used. Thank you.